Okay, so ready to dive into the world of Gatsby. Flapper dresses, champagne dreams, the whole shebang.
I'm ready.
We're tackling the Great Gatsby today, and I'm curious to see what we can uncover about this iconic novel.
Yeah.
We've got a fascinating mix of sources for this depth dive. A Chinese analysis that really digs into the structure and themes.
Seems interesting.
And then also some really detailed English chapter summaries that focus on all the symbolism Fitzgerald packed in.
Wow.
So should be pretty interesting.
It's amazing how The Great Gatsby still resonates with readers almost a century later.
Right.
I think because it taps into these universal longings, love, wealth,
Yeah.
the desire for something just out of reach.
Absolutely. You always want what you can't have, right? But I think it's more than just a love story, though.
Cool, first.
And there's this underlying social commentary.
Right.
Like Fitzgerald is kind of holding up a mirror to the Roaring Twenties, showing us both the glitter and the grime.
Exactly. And the Chinese analysis we have is interesting because it actually identifies a very deliberate three-part structure to the novel. First, you have the setup, the introduction to this dazzling world and all the key players.
Okay, setting the stage.
Right. And then we move into rising conflict and disillusionment as Gatsby's past is revealed.
Okay.
And then finally, we get to the tragic climax and resolution. So this structure really helps you understand the progression of the story.
Yeah.
And I think helps clarify Fitzgerald's intentions as well.
So let's talk about that world for a second.
Okay.
We're talking West Egg versus East Egg.
Right.
New money versus old
The
money.
Clash of the Titans,
Lavish parties.
champagne everywhere.
But then there's also this undercurrent of moral decay.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like Fitzgerald is saying, look at all this excess, but look closer. There's something rotten underneath.
Totally, yeah. And remember, this is the Roaring Twenties.
Right.
So there's this sense of exhilaration after World War I. But also, at the same time, there's a lot of social upheaval going on.
Yeah.
So you've got women pushing boundaries, the economy's booming.
Yeah.
And there's this sense that anything goes.
Right.
Fitzgerald captures all of that.
Yeah.
But he also shows the dark side.
Yeah.
The recklessness, the emptiness behind the facade.
And our guide through all of this is Nick Carraway,
Yes.
the narrator.
Our trusty narrator.
He's not from this world at all.
Right.
He's from the Midwest.
An outsider looking in.
So he's observing everything with fresh eyes.
Totally.
But at the same time, he's also drawn to it,
Yeah.
which I think makes him a really relatable character.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
who wouldn't be?
Nick is crucial because he's both an insider and an outsider at the same time.
He's walking that line.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's fascinated by Gatsby and the Buchanans, right?
Yeah.
But he also becomes increasingly uncomfortable with their moral compromises as the story progresses.
Yeah, good point.
So his perspective allows for a more nuanced view of the events and of all the characters.
Okay, so we've got the setting, we've got our narrator.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about some of these characters.
Let's get into it.
Starting with Tom and Daisy Buchanan.
The power couple.
They're the epitome of old money.
Totally. Yeah,
Wealthy, privileged.
absolutely.
That are they happy?
That is the question, isn't it?
Big question mark.
Yeah, Fitzgerald is very deliberate in how he portrays them.
Right.
Tom is physically imposing, arrogant, almost brutal.
Yeah.
He represents that sense of entitlement that often comes with inherited wealth.
Yeah, and Daisy, while beautiful and charming,
Right.
she has this underlying sadness,
Mm-hmm.
a sense of being trapped in her life.
Yeah, she's got that golden cage.
And we can't forget about Tom's affair.
Oh, right.
He's
Fair.
openly having an affair with Myrtle Wilson,
So,
who lives in the Valley of Ashes.
It's like he's flaunting his disregard for social norms.
Yeah, or he just doesn't care.
Right.
Yeah.
That affair is crucial, not just for the plot, but also for what it reveals about Tom's character. He treats Myrtle as a possession,
Oh, did
something to be used and discarded.
Yeah.
So it really highlights that theme of moral decay that runs throughout the novel.
Speaking of the Valley of Ashes,
Yeah.
that place is just so bleak and depressing.
Yeah, it's Fitzgerald's wasteland.
It's such a stark contrast to the glitz and glamour of West Egg and East Egg.
Right. And the Valley of Ashes is more than just a physical setting. It symbolizes the social and moral wasteland
Right.
that lies beneath the surface of this extravagant world.
Underneath all the glitz and glam.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that not everyone benefits from the economic boom of the Roaring Twenties.
And looming over everything are those creepy eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg on that billboard.
So creepy.
What do you make of those?
They're fascinating, right?
Yeah, they are.
They're often interpreted as a symbol of God, or at least a judgmental presence.
Yeah.
Silently observing the moral failings of all these characters.
Always watching.
Yeah, exactly. They add this layer of almost spiritual unease to the story.
Okay, so we've got Tom and Daisy representing old money, but then there's Jay Gatsby.
Ah, yes, the man of the hour.
He's the enigma,
Totally.
the guy throwing these lavish parties.
Champagne for everyone.
But nobody really knows him.
He's a mystery wrapped in an enigma.
Gatsby is fascinating.
I know, right?
Because he's shrouded in mystery.
Absolutely.
He represents that allure of the self-made man,
Yeah.
the American dream in its most seductive form.
But as the story unfolds, we start to see the cracks in that facade.
Right. And Nick finally meets him
Yes.
at one of these parties in Chapter 3, right?
That's right.
But Gatsby doesn't really reveal anything about himself.
Nope.
It just makes you more curious.
Exactly. It's like, who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
He is. And that's part of what makes him so compelling.
Mm-hmm.
He's got this carefully constructed persona, but we can sense there's more to him than meets the eye.
There's got to be more to the story.
Right.
There's also that intriguing scene with Jordan Baker.
Oh, yes.
Where they disappear into the library for like this hushed conversation.
Whispering secrets.
I'm always like, what were they talking about?
That scene is crucial.
Okay.
Because it's where we start to get hints about Gatsby's connection to Daisy. Jordan knows the truth, and we're just dying for her to spill the beans.
Oh, right.
Right.
Yeah.
We're like, come on, Jordan.
Okay, so Chapter 4.
All right.
Gatsby takes Nick for a ride.
Out for a spin.
In his flashy yellow car.
Gotta love that car.
And he starts to open up.
A little bit.
Kind of.
Just a crack.
But his story seems almost too good to be true.
Right.
Like, come on.
Yeah, he tells this elaborate tale
Yeah.
about being from a wealthy Midwestern family.
Right.
An Oxford graduate. A war hero.
Okay, Mr. Gatsby.
It's all very impressive, but Nick is starting to sense something's a little off.
Like the story's a little too polished.
Exactly. It feels rehearsed, like a carefully crafted lie.
And then we meet Meyer Wolfsheim.
Oh, yeah.
This shady businessman with connections to organized crime.
Not a good sign.
That's when the alarm bells start ringing for me.
Wolfsheim's presence is a huge turning point.
Okay.
Because it suggests that Gatsby's wealth might not be as legitimate as he claims.
Interesting.
It really raises questions about his past.
Yeah.
And how far he's willing to go to achieve his goals.
Right.
We're like, oh, Gatsby, what are you up to?
Okay, spill the tea.
All right.
Finally, Jordan tells Nick the truth about Gatsby and Daisy.
Here it comes.
They were in love years ago.
Back in the day.
But he wasn't wealthy enough for her family.
Classic love story obstacle.
And it all starts to click into place.
Right.
The parties, the mansion across the bay from Daisy.
It's all making sense now.
It's all for her.
The pieces of the puzzle are coming together.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, Gatsby.
It's a classic tale of lost love. But with this added layer of social ambition, right?
Oh, yeah.
Gatsby has literally reinvented himself to win Daisy back.
Wow, that's dedication.
Right. It makes you wonder, is it truly love?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it more about proving himself worthy in her eyes?
Yeah, good question. What's the motivation here?
Exactly.
And he wants Nick to help reunite them.
Putting Nick in a tough spot.
Talk about putting your friend in a tough spot.
Right. Nick is caught in the middle of this love triangle.
Yeah.
And he's starting to realize that getting involved with Gatsby might have some serious consequences.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's playing with fire.
Chapter 5 is all about that reunion.
Okay.
Gatsby and Daisy finally come face to face.
The moment we've all been waiting for.
At Nick's house.
The tension is palpable.
Oh, you can cut it with a knife?
Fitzgerald does an amazing job building the anticipation.
Yeah.
Gatsby is so nervous.
Oh, yeah, he's a wreck.
Pacing, offering Nick money.
Right.
Trying to make everything absolutely perfect for Daisy.
Yeah,
It
understandable.
was almost comical, but also kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because you can see how much this means to him.
Yeah, how much he's put into this.
Yeah, exactly.
And that moment when the clock falls off the mantelpiece.
Oh, right.
It's like a metaphor for Gatsby's whole attempt to recreate the past.
Oh, I like that.
It's fragile.
Yeah.
And it's not going to go as smoothly as he thinks.
That's a great point.
There's this awkwardness at first.
Yeah, they haven't seen each other in years.
But you can also feel the electricity between Gatsby and Daisy.
Right.
The years melt away, and you can just sense that there's still something there.
Oh, yeah, that spark.
But then Gatsby takes Nick and Daisy on a tour of his mansion.
Showing off the goods.
It's like he's showing off, trying to prove to Daisy how successful he's become.
Absolutely. The mansion becomes a symbol of his achievement,
Okay.
but also at the same time a symbol of his emptiness. It's filled with all these beautiful things, but it lacks warmth, genuine connection.
It's all about the surface.
Right, it's all for show.
And that scene with the shirts.
Oh, yeah, the shirt.
Gatsby just throws piles of colorful silk shirts onto the bed.
Mountains of shirt.
And Daisy bursts into tears.
So dramatic.
What's going on?
It's a complex moment.
Okay.
On one hand, Daisy's clearly overwhelmed by the beauty and the extravagance. But on the other hand, I think she's also realizing that material possessions can't fill the void in her life.
Yeah, maybe buyer's remorse for her own life.
Right.
It's like she's mourning the life she could have had with Gatsby.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe even the person she's become.
Yeah, the path not taken.
And for Gatsby, it's a moment of disappointment.
Right.
He thinks he's showing Daisy how much he can provide for her.
He thinks he's impressing her.
But it backfires.
Totally.
Do you think this is when Gatsby starts to realize that his dream might be unattainable?
I think so.
Yeah.
The reality of Daisy is starting to clash with this idealized version he's been holding on to for all these years.
And then there's this interesting shift with the green light. It's like it loses some of its symbolic power once Daisy is back in Gatsby's life.
That's a great observation.
The green light represented this longing,
Right.
this yearning for something just out of reach. But now that Daisy is there,
Right there in front of him,
the illusion starts to crumble.
the fantasy fades.
Okay, chapter 6.
Nick.
We finally get the truth about Gatsby's past.
The backstory revealed.
Turns out he was born James Gatz,
Not quite as glamorous.
a poor kid from North Dakota.
Talk about a self-made man.
That is quite the
This is
transformation.
a fascinating backstory.
Yeah.
He completely reinvents himself, changes his name, creates this whole new identity.
He really was born again.
Right. It speaks to the allure of the American dream,
Yeah.
but also the lengths that people will go to escape their past.
And he meets this wealthy yacht owner, Dan Cody,
Oh, yeah?
who takes him under his wing.
A mentor.
It's like a mentorship, right?
Yes, Lord.
But it also exposes Gatsby to the world of the super rich, the good and the bad.
Highs and lows.
Cody becomes the symbol of both opportunity and corruption.
Right. He shows Gatsby what's possible,
Yeah.
but he also represents the moral compromises that often come with wealth.
Yeah, interesting. It feels like Gatsby is walking this tightrope between wanting to achieve the American dream and being aware of its dark underbelly.
Exactly. He's striving for something.
Right.
But is it truly fulfilling,
Yeah.
or is he chasing a mirage?
Then we get this awkward encounter. Tom and Daisy actually attend one of Gatsby's parties.
Oh.
It's like a train wreck waiting to happen.
Disaster waiting to strike.
The tension is so thick.
You can feel it.
Tom is immediately suspicious of Gatsby.
Yeah.
And you can tell he's looking for a way to expose him as a fraud.
Totally. Tom's not buying it.
And Daisy seems intrigued by Gatsby,
Right.
but she's also hesitant.
Torn between two worlds.
You can tell she's torn between her past feelings for him
Yeah.
and her current life with Tom.
It's a classic love triangle. But with these layers of social class and ambition thrown in,
Right. There's a lot at stake.
it's a recipe for disaster.
And then, chapter 7,
Here we go.
everything comes to a head.
The climax.
It's like the temperature is rising along with the emotional states.
Fitzgerald uses the heat brilliantly in this chapter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it mirrors the tension,
Okay.
the simmering conflict that's about to explode.
Gatsby has stopped throwing parties.
Right.
He's fired his servant.
He's going all in.
He's completely focused on Daisy.
Tunnel vision.
And I think he's starting to lose sight of reality.
He's blinded by love.
He's so blinded by his desire to win her back that he can't see how much she's changed and how much he's changed.
A recipe for heartbreak.
Okay, so that luncheon at the Buchanan's house.
Oh, yeah, that's a tense scene.
Tom is seething. Gatsby is trying to convince Daisy to leave Tom.
Awkward.
It's like a powder keg ready to blow.
And then Gatsby makes this huge mistake.
What's that?
He demands that Daisy tell Tom she never loved him.
Oh, wow.
It's like he's trying to erase the past, rewrite history.
And how does that go over?
Well, it backfires spectacularly.
Ouch.
Daisy hesitates.
Right.
She can't bring herself to say it.
Yeah, you can't just erase history.
Exactly. And that's the moment when Gatsby's dream truly starts to unravel. He realizes that Daisy is not the idealized woman he's been longing for.
Yeah.
She's flawed, she's afraid.
She's human.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's ultimately unwilling to risk everything for him.
And Tom seizes the opportunity to tear Gatsby down.
Oh, yeah, Tom's not going to miss that chance.
He exposes his shady business dealings, paints him as a criminal.
It's brutal.
Tom represents the old money, the established order.
Right. He sees Gatsby as a threat, and he's determined to put him back in his place.
And Daisy.
She makes a choice.
She chooses Tom.
Heartbreaking.
It's a heartbreaking moment for Gatsby, but it's also a commentary on the limitations of social mobility.
Absolutely, no matter how much wealth Gatsby accumulates, he can't overcome the barriers of class and social prejudice.
It's a reminder that the American dream, while alluring, is often an illusion.
Yeah, it's not always about hard work and determination sometimes. It's about who you know, where you come from.
And then the tragedy unfolds.
Oh,
They're driving back to Long Island.
Okay.
And Daisy, who's behind the wheel of Gatsby's car,
This isn't going to be good.
hits and kills Myrtle Wilson.
It's such a shocking turn of events.
Yeah, it comes out of nowhere.
And it highlights the recklessness that permeates the lives of these characters.
Right. They're just so careless.
They're so caught up in their own dramas, their own desires, that they become oblivious to the consequences of their actions.
And Daisy, instead of taking responsibility, retreats into Tom's protection.
Of course.
It's like she's reverting to the safety of her privileged world.
Right. Back to her comfort zone.
Leaving Gatsby to face the fallout.
It's a moment that reveals the depths of Daisy's selfishness and cowardice.
Yeah.
She's willing to sacrifice Gatsby to preserve her own comfortable life.
And Gatsby, in a final act of love and loyalty,
Gatsby.
decides to take the blame for Myrtle's death.
He's a better person than she is.
He's still tripped to protect Daisy, even though it means sacrificing his own future.
It's a noble but ultimately futile gesture.
Yeah.
It shows how deeply Gatsby loves Daisy,
Yeah.
but it also highlights his tragic flaw,
What's that?
his inability to see her for who she truly is.
So we're left with Gatsby, heartbroken and alone,
Gatsby.
watching over Daisy from afar,
Still holding on.
still clinging to the sliver of hope that she'll come to him.
It's such a tragic image.
Yeah, it is. So Gatsby's left holding the bag, so to speak, taking the blame for Myrtle's death.
Yeah.
I feel like Chapter 8 really drives home the sense of inevitability.
Oh, yeah.
Like
yeah,
the tragedy is about to unfold, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop it.
You're right. There's this palpable shift in the mood.
Yeah.
Gatsby is withdrawn. The parties have stopped.
Yeah, it's over.
He's lost in this fantasy of Daisy coming to him. But it's clear that she's moved on.
He spends the night outside her house, watching over her.
Oh, Gatsby.
But she never appears.
So sad.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
He's built his entire life around this dream, and it's crumbling before his eyes.
Right in front of him.
Do you think he finally sees Daisy for who she really is at this point?
I think he's starting to.
Okay.
There's a line in the chapter where Nick says he had waited 5 years and bought a mansion where he dispensed starlight to casual moths so that he could come over some afternoon to a stranger's garden.
Wow.
It's like Nick and maybe even Gatsby himself is recognizing the futility of it all.
And then we have George Wilson,
Right.
consumed by grief and rage, understandably, over Myrtle's death.
Yeah.
He's on this misguided quest for revenge, and he misinterprets those billboard eyes as a sign from God.
Those eyes become this symbol of moral judgment, but also the absence of real justice. It's like Fitzgerald is saying that in this world, the wealthy and powerful can often escape accountability for their actions.
And in a tragic twist of fate, George ends up shooting Gatsby, believing he was the one driving the car that night.
Right.
And then George takes his own life.
So tragic.
It's just senseless tragedy.
I know.
A chain reaction of bad decisions and misplaced blame.
It's a moment that really highlights the destructive consequences of clinging to illusions.
Yeah, for sure.
Gatsby is killed because of a lie.
Right.
Daisy's lie about being the driver.
And George is driven to murder by his grief and his misinterpretation of events.
It's a powerful reminder that our perceptions can have such a huge impact on our actions.
It's also interesting that Gatsby dies in his pool,
Yeah.
almost unnoticed.
Oh,
Such a stark contrast to the lavish parties he used to throw.
That's a great observation. It emphasizes the fleeting nature of wealth and fame.
Yeah.
As soon as Gatsby is gone, his world disappears.
Yeah.
The people who flocked to his parties, they were never really his friends.
Right.
They were just drawn to the spectacle.
And speaking of those people, they're conspicuously absent from Gatsby's funeral.
Nobody showed up.
It's just Nick, Gatsby's father, Owl Eyes, and a few servants.
A sad little gathering.
It's a pretty pathetic turnout for a man who seemed to have everything.
Right. It's a powerful commentary on the shallowness of that world
Yeah.
that Gatsby was trying so desperately to be a part of.
They were attracted to the image, not the man himself.
Yeah, just the surface.
And Daisy and Tom,
What about them?
they just disappear. No condolences, no remorse.
Wow, really?
It's like they're wiping their hands clean of the whole situation.
Their absence is telling.
Right.
It shows their lack of empathy, their inability to take responsibility for their actions.
Yeah, I mean, what does that say about them?
Right, they're more concerned with protecting themselves
Yeah.
than with acknowledging the pain they've caused.
Nick is disgusted by their behavior.
Yeah, I can imagine.
He's seen enough of this world and he decides to go back to the Midwest,
Back to his roots.
leaving behind the moral decay and emptiness of East Egg.
Yeah, he's had enough.
I think he's realizing that the American dream as it's presented in this world is a sham.
I agree. Nick is our moral compass throughout the novel.
Right.
He's been seduced by Gatsby's world,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately he recognizes its shallowness and corruption.
Yeah.
His decision to leave represents a rejection of those values.
Before he leaves, he has that final encounter with Tom,
Oh, yeah.
who admits he told George Wilson that Gatsby was the one who killed Myrtle.
Oh, wow.
Even in the face of tragedy, Tom is still trying to manipulate the situation to protect himself.
Classic Tom.
It's a final reminder that Tom is ultimately a selfish and cowardly man.
Right. He's incapable of taking responsibility for his actions,
Yeah.
and he's willing to let others suffer the consequences.
And then the novel ends with that haunting image of boats beating against the current,
Oh, I love that line.
borne back ceaselessly into the past.
It's such a powerful metaphor.
It's a reminder that we can't escape our past,
Mm-hmm.
but we also can't let it define us.
We have to find a way to navigate the currents
Right.
to keep moving forward.
Even if it feels like we're constantly being pulled back.
Exactly.
So Gatsby's left there, heartbroken and alone, watching over Daisy from afar, still clinging to this sliver of hope that she'll come to him.
It really is tragic.
Yeah, it is. Chapter 8 really emphasizes that Gatsby's clinging to this idea of Daisy that really doesn't exist anymore.
Right, he's holding on to this idealized version of her and of their past together.
But the reality is she's moved on.
She has, and Gatsby's inability to let go of this dream ultimately leads to his downfall.
Yeah, he's so fixated on recreating the past that he fails to see the present for what it is.
And that's a danger we all face sometimes.
Oh, for sure. We get stuck in our memories or our fantasies.
Right, and we lose sight of what's right in front of us.
And in Gatsby's case, that inability to let go has some pretty dire consequences.
Absolutely leads to his death.
Yeah, it's really tragic because, in a way, Gatsby is a sympathetic character.
He is. He's driven by this intense love for Daisy.
Yeah, he's willing to do anything for her, even sacrifice his own life.
But that love is also his undoing.
Right. It blinds him to her flaws and to the reality of their situation.
He's so caught up in this fantasy that he can't see the truth.
And the truth is, Daisy is not the perfect woman he imagines her to be.
She's selfish. She's shallow.
She's ultimately more concerned with her own comfort and security than with Gatsby's happiness.
Exactly. And in the end, she chooses the safety and security of her life with Tom over the uncertainty of a future with Gatsby.
And it's that choice that seals Gatsby's fate.
It does. It sets in motion the chain of events that leads to his death.
Yeah, it's like Fitzgerald is saying that in this world, love can be both a powerful force and a destructive one.
It can lift you up or it can tear you down.
And in Gatsby's case, it ultimately tears him down.
It does. And I think that's one of the reasons why The Great Gatsby continues to resonate with readers today.
Yeah, because it speaks to those universal themes of love, loss, and the dangers of clinging to the past.
It's a story that makes us question our own desires and motivations.
Right, and it reminds us that sometimes the things we want most are the very things that can destroy us.
It's a powerful message, and one that's as relevant today as it was almost a century ago.
So there you have it, our deep dive into The Great Gatsby. We've covered the plot, the characters, the symbolism, and the enduring themes.
We've explored the Roaring Twenties, the American dream, the allure of wealth, and the destructive power of obsession.
Hopefully you've gained some new insights into this classic novel.
And maybe even connected it to your own experiences in some way.
If you haven't already read The Great Gatsby, we highly recommend it.
It's a novel that will stay with you long after you finish the last page.
And as always, thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.